It's time for the digital era, which has seen the rise of a new C-level executive, the Chief Digital Officer. Today's companies with digital ambitions are entrusting the CDO with the responsibility of drafting and executing their digital strategy. This has far-reaching ramifications on the CIO role. Ladies and gentlemen, Senior EVP and Group CTO of Kotak Mahindra Bank, Ms. Aruna Rao, I'd request you, ma'am, to please come on stage to share your thoughts on the role of a CIO in the era of CDO in a fireside chat with Sneha Jha, Assistant Editor of ET-CIO. Welcome back, Sneha. And of course, ma'am, looking forward to hearing both of you. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, women of substance on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. In an interesting departure from technology, we'll talk to one of the most celebrated women technology leaders in India about leadership. And so we'll dive straight into the topic in the interest of time. So the CIO role remains very key in a business institution like a bank, but there's also a rapidly evolving role of a CDO that we see emerging. So why do you think banks really need a CDO?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Sneha and ET-CIO for having me over here. Okay, so your question is, why do we need a CDO? So I think before I delve into that, I'll just talk briefly about what I think the role is, and then we'll say why. So a chief digital officer is basically charged with defining the digital vision of an organization like a bank. So it's all about bringing transformational focus on the application of technology. It's about using technologies like analytics, AI, mobile, and net, etc., to actually create a digital product or a digital service, and not just to automate what already exists. So to give an example, you can use artificial intelligence, analytics. I think Mr. Tambe was talking about using these technologies to do lending in a different way. So you could do something called a 1-minute loan, right? It's a new digital product. So it's application of technologies that exist or emerging technologies, but to do business in a completely different way. Or, for example, in the services area, you can transform the way we serve our customers by using biometrics to authenticate the customer. So instead of using a handwritten signature to authenticate the customer after he physically walks into the branch, you can use various forms of digital, biometrics to authenticate him so that he can do things like changing his address or mobile number while sitting at home. That's a complete transformation of the service. Now, this is what the chief digital officer is going to be focusing on. And really, it goes way beyond technology to actually things like changing culture, mindset, and even business and economic models, really. I talked to you about the 1-minute loan. Just think of the usual lending officer. The loan officer is used to having a customer walking in, perusing various documents, maybe even speaking to the potential customer before disposing a loan. And here we're talking about a loan which is done basis a lot of data, analytics, AI to determine whether the customer is creditworthy or not. And it really takes a big change in mindset to be actually able to let go of that money based on this technology. So really, the CDO is doing a lot outside of application of technology to changing mindset and transforming business. So I think there is a different role here.
What steps should banks take to ensure there's a clear division of responsibilities to avoid any conflicting interest or working principles and to avoid turf wars between the CIO and the CDO?
Okay, so, I just talked to you what I thought the role of the CDO is about. So the whole digital arena is a very wide one with two separate areas which require razor-sharp focus. You have the whole area of identifying new technologies, emerging technologies, learning to implement them, leverage them, adopt them, integrate them into your existing landscape. And that's all about the technology area. And there is an equally sharp focus that's needed to be able to leverage the digital operations opportunities that are coming out, to benefit the bank, to provide differentiation, to create a new economic model. So the two arenas can be really quite different. And I think this is the definition that we can use to clarify, to define the charter of the two units, which, of what they need to do. It sort of guides the staffing of the units for career progression and of what the people do in the two units. But when it comes down to actual day-to-day work, we all talk about the fact that we have to do a lot of digital development in a very agile fashion. And as we all know, the agile methodology really requires teams to work together, where the barriers between different departments really have to sort of break down. There are people with different skills. There'll be a person with Android coding skills, or perhaps microservices development skills, and another person who does UI experience design and things like that. But they all have to work together. And at this point in time, it's not about being in one department or the other that makes sense. It's really about working together to deliver that product. So at that point, I don't think you really need to define rules, about who does what. It's more at the conceptual level to define the charter of the units.
What are some of the ways in which the nexus of the CIO-CDO union can bring tremendous value to the enterprise?
Okay. So you're saying the other way around, rather than conflict, how can you leverage the two together? And yeah, so I do think that it can provide a lot of benefit. I have had experience where both the CIO and that's me, the technology side, and the CDO can, speak in one voice to get heard louder in the organization where we believe investments need to be done and things like that. For example, I'll give you an example over here. 5 years back, I would think, the technology team, which is, from my side, we had started to identify that there was a need for something that we call an API manager, a platform that enables the inside systems of a bank to integrate with all of the external world. And this was about 2014, where people had started to talk about it, but it was not yet, mainstream. And we took this in, we talked about it to the businesses, and it got sort of integrated into our strategy roadmap. It was brought to the board. Everybody agreed about it. But when it came time to actually putting money where the sort of plan was, it was always lower in the priorities, until the CDO also stepped in and started to bring up a number of good use cases. He pointed out how the internal systems can be integrated with various merchants externally, which would increase transaction business volume, which can increase customer acquisition. And suddenly, the whole API platform became alive to the businesses. And then, of course, no schedule was fast enough to get it out. So here was a situation where both of us had to kind of speak in the same direction to make a theoretical possibility into a very real benefit for the bank.
Can you share some industry best practices that the CIOs and CDOs should adhere to while working together?
This is going to become very trite, but basically, like I said, both roles have got different focuses, different points to deliver. So it is indeed possible that when trying to determine investment priorities or project release priorities, the CDO would be looking towards maybe creating a new digital product or improving customer experience, while the technology side would be thinking about, long-range investments to make an application cloud native for, faster, rapid deliveries and things like that. So there has to be, slightly differing kind of focus and agendas in this. But at the end of the day, the answer only is to be tightly engaged, to continue to speak together and then make those decisions. Because at the end of the day, the main thing to remember is that the success for the bank is when both really work together. If you launch a new digital product, but it's not going to scale, then even if it is an excellent idea, if it's an excellent digital opportunity, it really is not benefiting anybody. And similarly, you know, if the CIO or CTO pushes the security or the scalability sort of agenda and we don't have adoption, then who has won? So it's actually perfect. It sort of keeps a tension between the two, but once you maintain the balance, that's really where the bank wins.
That was as brief, as pithy, and as deep as it can be. Thank you so much, ma'am, for doing this. I know it's very hard to get you to speak, but there are people who want to hear your insights, and I'm glad you agreed to do this. And I'm also glad we touched upon some of the issues that we did, right, from partnering and, you know, separate roles and responsibilities and how they can, you know, make a truly digital enterprise. Thank you so much again for talking to us.
Thank you for having me here, and I think we've also done our bit to catch up with these schedules.